Greetings and welcome to another edition of Dharma Dirt here at the Old Dog Zendo at Iron Mountain. This talk is one I gave recently at a session in New Mexico, and it's a bit longer than usual, so please sit comfortably. Dogen said, "The capacity of making a true person is the bones and marrow of Buddha ancestors." Brother David Stendelras said, "Another aspect of this original experience that people would agree on, one becomes aware of what it means to be human." What is a true person? What is it to be truly human? Lin Ji speaks of the true person of no rank. How many times does a commentator say that some monk or disciple is not yet genuine? What does it mean to be genuine, a true person? How long does it take, and how do we know? There are many koans and stories that point to this matter, but none are more direct than case number 2 in the Wumenguan, Baizhang's wild fox. Now, before we begin our tale, we must consider the nature of the fox in Asian folklore. The fox is a very complex and sometimes contradictory creature. The fox can lead people astray, causing misfortune, or it can be benevolent, bringing prosperity and luck. It can take on human form. The fox is also a trickster, similar to coyote in southwestern folklore. So, here we have an ambivalent, contradictory, sometimes good, sometimes not so good, or even outright evil character, one that can help or harm. Does this sound familiar? Maybe take a look in the mirror. How many times has a master chided a monk or a student saying, "You wild fox spirit"? It's not a compliment. Nevertheless, we can only practice as who and what we are in this moment, as flawed and as imperfect as we find ourselves to be. Dogen writes, "To explore the matter in this way, when demons become Buddhas, they use their demon to defeat their demon in order to become a Buddha. When Buddhas become Buddhas, they take up their Buddha nature to fathom their Buddha nature and become a Buddha. When ordinary humans become Buddhas, they take up their humanity to harmonize their humanity and become a Buddha." That's our practice, to take up our humanity, to harmonize our humanity and become a Buddha. That is, to become fully and completely human, to realize, make real our humanity. So the case itself is quite a long one. It reads, Baizhang was a Dharma heir of Mansu. Whenever people came to hear him give a public Dharma talk, there was an old man who always came into the Dharma hall immediately following those in the monastic assembly. He always listened to the Dharma talk, and then when the monks would leave the hall, he would leave at the same time. Then one day he lingered behind. Thereupon the master asked him, "You who are standing here, who are you?" The old man replied, "To speak truly, I am not a human being. Long ago, during the eon of Kasyapa Buddha, I dwelt upon this mountain as abbot. Then one day a trainee asked me, 'Is even the one who does the great practice still subject to cause and effect? I replied that such a one is no longer subject to cause and effect. After that, as a consequence, I was reduced to being reborn as a wild fox for 500 lives. I now beseech you, O venerable monk, say something that will turn me around, for I long to rid myself of this wild fox's attitude of mind. Thereupon he asked the master, is even someone who does the great practice subject to cause and effect? The master replied, such a one is not blind to causality. Upon hearing these words, the old man had a great awakening. Prostrating himself before the master, he said, since I have already shed the outer trappings of a wild fox, I have taken to dwelling on the far side of this mountain. Dare I ask the venerable abbot to perform for me a monk's funeral service? The master had the senior monk who supervises the meditation hall strike the wooden gong to signal the monks to assemble, so that he might tell them that after their meal there would be a funeral service for a deceased monk. The whole assembly was at ease with this, though they wondered about it, since there was no sick person in the temple infirmary. After the meal, the master simply led the assembly up to the base of a rock on the other side of the mountain, where they saw him use his traveling staff to point out the corpse of a wild fox. They cremated the remains in accordance with the appropriate procedure. At nightfall, the master went to the Dharma hall where he gave the monks a talk on the preceding events. His Dharma heir, Huang Bo, asked him, in the past, the man said the wrong thing to turn his disciple around, and as a consequence was reduced to being a wild fox for 500 lives. Suppose he had not made this mistake, what would have become of him? The master said, come up close and I will tell you. Thereupon, Huang Bo went on up and gave the master a slap. The master clapped his hands and laughed, saying, I always thought that the beards of foreigners were red, and here is a red-bearded foreigner. That's the end of the case. So, here is a mysterious old man who listened to the Dharma talk of Baizhang and then leaves, until one day he stays behind and confronts Baizhang, who asks him, you who are standing here, who are you? A natural question. Baizhang at this point doesn't seem to be testing him as he would a monk he knew, or maybe he is. Who are you in the deepest sense? On the other hand, maybe he is just asking, as any of us usually would if a stranger stands before us. But the old man's answer is anything but a usual one. To speak truly, I am a non-human being. Well, if you are not a human being, then what the heck are you? This could be a statement of profound understanding. I have let go of all names and forms, including any concept of human or not human. I am just a being. I am just being. Just this. But the old monk goes on. Long ago, during the eon of Kashyapa Buddha, I dwelt upon this mountain as abbot. Well, if the monk were truly just being, then why does he say such things? And why does he give himself the identity of a former abbot? Kashyapa Buddha is the Buddha of the previous world cycle. So that was a very long time ago indeed. And this old man was the abbot of this same monastery, or at least the same mountain. So, as is customary, the stranger would also be named Baizhang. So, now we have two Baizhangs, an elder and a younger. But we need to look at this carefully. Dogen points out that the two Baizhangs are not two, nor are they one. How is that possible? Is it just another one of those silly Zen paradoxes? Is the Baizhang of today a rebirth of the Baizhang of the previous Kalpa? And what about our own former selves of last year, or 30 years ago, or longer, or even an hour ago? Are those selves the same as the ones sitting and listening right now, or are they different? And what about this eon of Kashyapa Buddha? Where is that right now? Where is the empty eon that is supposed to occur between one world cycle and the next? If you say, long, long ago, you're in the same condition as this elder Baizhang. Old Baizhang and young Baizhang may be one, or they may not be. Not one, not two. I am a non-human being, or I am not a human being. Well, are any of us truly human? Is not the whole point of our practice to gain or regain our true humanity? That which is not bound to form or emptiness. To the extent we are caught up in the world of time, space, and karma, to the extent that we have not truly let go of the ego self, we are still somewhat less than human. So this is the old Baizhang's confession. I have not yet truly realized my humanity. But then the old Baizhang goes on to tell what seems to be a sad story. Long ago, during the eon of Kashyapa Buddha, I dwelt on this mountain as abbot. Then one day a trainee asked me, is even the one who does the great practice still subject to cause and effect? How many times has a young monk asked a master such a question? Does a dog have a Buddha nature or not? What is the Tao? How can I be free and non-transgressing? I beg you, put my mind at rest. We would all like to hear a turning word, some word or phrase that will set us free. One who does the great practice is one who is indeed liberated, deeply, deeply realized. So way back then, that trainee is assuming that the elder Baizhang is one of these. After all, he was abbot of a great monastery. How could he not be? But the elder Baizhang continues his confession. I replied that such a one is no longer subject to cause and effect. No longer subject to cause and effect. Well, if one is a genuine human, fully realized, one is not subject to cause and effect. One is cause and effect. Existence itself is cause and effect. There is nothing in this world outside of cause and effect. To be outside of cause and effect is to not exist in this world. So does the elder Baizhang's answer show him as a wild fox, not yet fully human? After that, as a consequence, I was reduced to being reborn as a wild fox for 500 lives. So there it is. Here's a monk, an abbot, who even as he tells his story, is completely caught up in the world of time, space, and karma, of cause and effect, of right and wrong, is not. To be so entrapped is to have the mind of a wild fox. And for 500 lives. Or maybe I should say 500 more lives. That is, lives of a fox that we see every morning or evening when we stand before a mirror in the bathroom brushing our teeth. Are they lives of suffering? Well, maybe. But any life in karma has its joys as well as sorrows, but always with that undercurrent of suffering, dukkha. Wumenguan says that the fox lived 500 blessed lives. But even so, the monk was caught in the eternal round of death and rebirth, 500 times or more. But where are all those past lives right now? If we can realize the true nature of our karmic merry-go-round, we can see the path to liberation. Many births, many deaths. I am serene in this cycle, says Young Ja. Why 500 lives? 5,000 lives? Why one life? Are they all the same or are they different? In the Divine Comedy, Dante and his guide Virgil travel through the inferno, viewing all the savagely ironic punishments suffered by the souls trapped there. These souls scream, blaspheme, curse God and the circumstances that brought them there. But among all that multitude of the damned, not one of them ever asks, how can I get out of here? They are inextricably attached to their suffering. They are in hell by their own choice, their own continuing choices. So why 500 lives? Baizhang the Elder has chosen them, even as we choose our own lives moment by moment, breath by breath. His answer to the trainee, such a one is not subject to cause and effect, may well have been a correct answer, depending on circumstance and the condition of the monk. But the answer itself is not the point. If the truth is spoken by one of no understanding, it becomes false. If a falsehood is spoken by a person of understanding, it becomes true. So how did that elder Baizhang answer? Was it out of an attachment to a self-image as a Zen master? And this Zen master continued in his attachment to an identity, a self, a life, a being, for another 500 lives. So, maybe in some of his lives, he visited Baizhang's monastery and heard some Teisho. And at some point, he decided that it was time to do something about his wild fox mind. How? He must go before the teacher and ask. And he begs, I now beseech you, O venerable monk, say something that will turn me around, for I long to rid myself of this wild fox's attitude of mind. Yes, the body is not important. It's the mind. All is mind, all is Buddha mind. At some point in our lives, our lifetimes, we all come to this state. We begin to see that the constant machinations of the discursive mind, with all its confusions and delusions, schemes and dreams, is in fact that wild fox mind, and it's time to move on. That's when the search begins. The first ox herding picture. Thereupon he asked the master the same question. Is even someone who does the great practice subject to cause and effect? And the master replied, such a one is not blind to causality. Same question, different answer. It seems to be correct in the usual sense. But again, that's not the point. Where did this answer come from? The answer that liberates the elder Baizhang. It came from a place of no attachment, no identity, no self, no life, no being. Baizhang the younger sees clearly. Therefore, it is a true answer, an answer that sunders the bonds that create suffering. Upon hearing these words, the old man had a great awakening. Prostrating himself before the master, he said, since I have already shed the outer trappings of a wild fox, I have taken to dwelling on the far side of this mountain. Now, this is bizarre. He has shed the trappings of a wild fox. But what are these trappings? Are they the teeth, fur, and claws and a bushy tail? Or are they greed, hatred, and ignorance, the delusive, divisive ego self? Let's face it, we are all wild foxes in human form. And now the elder Baizhang lives on the other side of the mountain. But if he has shed the trappings, the delusions, why come to the younger Baizhang and ask for a turning word? Case number 10 in the Wumenguan. A monk, Qing Shui by name, said to Cao Shan, I am poor and alone. I beg you, master, please give me alms. Cao Shan said, Venerable Shui. Qing Shui said, yes, sir. Cao Shan said, you have already drunk 3 cups of the finest wine in China, and still you say you have not moistened your lips. So here we have a monk who is destitute, who has dropped away everything, all the trappings, but yet something is missing. So he goes to a teacher. Shurto, in Identity of Relative and Absolute, says, to be attached to things is illusion. To encounter the absolute is not yet enlightenment. There must be one more step. Such a one is not blind to causality. No, you must drink the wine, come forth, function in the world of time, space, and karma. This is now the turning word for the elder Baizhang. And then, dare I ask the venerable monk to perform for me a monk's funeral service? Oh, so now he wants the funeral service of a monk. But this man is not a monk in this kalpa. He's not undergone the training, taken no vows. Does this mean that just anyone can walk into a monastery and demand the rights of a monk? Well, here's where compassion comes in. Sometimes you break the rules. After all, the old man was a monk at one time, no matter how long ago. The master had the senior monk who supervises the meditation hall strike the wooden gong to signal the monks to assemble, so that he might tell them that after their meal there would be a funeral service for a deceased monk. The whole assembly was at ease with this, though they wondered about it since there was no sick person in the temple infirmary. After the meal, the master simply led the assembly up to the base of a rock on the other side of the mountain, where they saw him use his traveling staff to point out the corpse of a wild fox. They cremated the remains in accordance with the appropriate procedure. So the body of the fox is cremated, reduced to ashes. Thus the elder Baizhang's lives are obliterated. It's very like what we do when we burn the klesha papers during a precept renewal ceremony. In doing so, we let go of the greed, hatred, and ignorance depicted on the klesha paper as a pig, a snake, and a rooster. So Baizhang, in his compassion, sends away all those 500 lives of the fox, and Baizhang the elder is redeemed. But wait, how did Baizhang the younger know exactly where the body of the fox was? On the other side of the mountain, but that's not very precise. Dido Lori provides an interesting take on this. He says that Baizhang was just walking in the hills one day and spied a dead fox. Maybe he thought, aha, this is the end result of all our karmic struggles, hopes, and fears in this life, a desiccated corpse. And the whole story came into his mind. At nightfall, the master went to the Dharma hall where he gave the monks a talk on the preceding events. So, Baizhang tells a story, a fable, and a great joke for the edification of his monks, and just maybe as a test. His Dharma heir, Huangbo, then asked him, in the past, the man said the wrong thing to turn his disciple around, and as a consequence was reduced to being a wild fox for 500 lives. Suppose he had not made this mistake, what would have become of him? Huangbo, standing in the assembly, spots a flaw in the tale. Can you see what it was? What was this great joke that Baizhang played? The master said, come up close and I will tell you. I suspect Baizhang is getting a good grip on his stick, but Huangbo, being 7 feet tall, has the reach on the master. Thereupon, Huangbo went on up and gave the master a slap. I doubt that Huangbo's slap was a great whomp that would knock the master off his seat. More likely, it was a gentle slap of affection. This is a moment of mutual recognition. Huangbo sees Baizhang clearly. Baizhang sees Huangbo clearly. I see you, you see me. A wonderful moment. The master clapped his hands and laughed, saying, I've always thought that the beards of foreigners were red, and here is a red-bearded foreigner. Yes, here is red-bearded Bodhidharma standing here right before you. So there it is. All us wild foxes, we have our work cut out for us. The fact that we are here sitting and listening to Teisho shows that we have realized what the elder Baizhang realized. We have to let go of our 500 lives of foxdom and practice now the Dharma. So we take up our fox nature to fully realize our fox nature and become Buddhas. Together with all beings, we realize the way.